He is one of the world's youngest successful entrepreneurs. At 24, he has built chains of successful businesses. His name commands respect and attention, and he is a member of an elite group, the successful ones. So who is James White, and what is his secret to success?
So James was supposed to be born on January 18th, and he wasn't going to wait. As he's not waited for anything his entire life. He's a go-getter. So he decided to come 2 weeks early and caused a little bit of problems for us, right? Yeah. We called the doctor, and the doctor told us we had to come in right away. So we came in, and he had to be delivered by a C-section. So they took me down into the operating room and did the C-section. Tim was allowed to come in. They originally were going to give me an epidural so that I could be awake for him to be born.
James was different from his brother. His mother observed it at an early age.
James was probably about 4 weeks old, and I had him in the living room, and he was sitting in a little rocking chair, and the sun was shining on him. He kind of looked like a little angel. And from that day, I looked at Tim and I said, you know, Tim, this kid isn't like any other kid that I've seen. He's quiet, he sleeps through the night, he doesn't wake up during the day and scream and yell for food. He just wakes up real quiet with a smile on his face. And at nighttime he goes to bed at 7 o'clock at night, sleeps right through the night. Boy, did we ever get lucky with this one.
The days of an angel would quickly come to an end. The spirit of fight would emerge in White.
So we put up with it for about a year. We disciplined him. We tried everything we could with him to make sure that he was a good little boy. 3 years old came along, and he was still not bad, but hyper and getting into things and getting his brother into trouble. And so anyway, we thought, you know, I wonder if this is what's going to be like for the rest of our lives with this kid. And sure enough, we didn't have to ask. That's what it was like.
At the age of 4, White started his campaign.
My first business when I was 4 years old, it was a candy store in my parents' basement. I used to go to the local convenience store, buy the candy for 5 or 10 cents a piece, and I would sell it to my parents' friends and my friends, being young, at 25 or 50 cents a piece. And that's where I realized, when I probably realized the value of a relationship and being sincere and pure in your intentions. Relationships are a big part to having business flourish.
His parents, in an effort to keep him out of trouble, decided to help him out.
We bought him a little cash register, and he would tell all the neighborhood kids that he had a candy store downstairs and they could come and buy candy from his store.
After 4 years of selling candy, White thought of something bigger. He realized that there are many parents who would love to go out on New Year's Eve but stay home because of their kids. He wanted to offer them babysitting services in exchange for a little cash so they could have time for themselves.
I did up flyers on a program called Notepad on our, I believe it was a 386 computer back then, which is really slow and ancient. I did this flyer, and I cut it out with a pair of scissors, and the flyer was all crooked. It didn't look very good, but anyways, I was young and I didn't realize the value of advertising, marketing, and I went out and delivered all these flyers by hand to all these condominium complexes. I never did actually get any kids for New Year's Eve. However, what I did is I actually got a call from a lady named Pam Keeping, and she had 2 kids, Jared and Jenny, and I believe they were 4 or 5 years old. And my first week, Friday, I used to babysit with them every Friday, and the first week I got a $100 bill.
His new business was running very well. In October of 1998, it was a very cold winter in Calgary. Susan's friend was running a landscaping company and needed some help because of his wife's condition.
A friend of ours called us up. His name was Ted. And he phoned us up and said, I have a small landscaping company. And he said, my wife is sick today, Carol. Would you guys mind coming out to help us? And we said, sure, absolutely. They were great friends of ours. So we called both of our kids in and said, would you come and help Ted and Carol? Remember that?
Yeah.
So, of course, both the kids were willing because as a family, you know, that's something that we always do is make sure that we look after ourselves and our friends. So we went out to help Ted, and Carol was at home sick, and we did some landscaping.
James had a taste of real work, but there was something special that would happen on that day that changed his life forever.
You know, we were working our butts off, but it really wasn't that hard work. We didn't need education. We just pushed a lawnmower or a power raker, an aerator that manicured your lawn for the summertime. And I seen him at the end of the day with a big, I want to call it a wad of cash, but it was a big roll of cash. And it must have been about $1,000 or $2,000 in there. So I went, wow, where'd you get all that money from? And Ted replied, I made all that money today. And I said, wow, you can make $2,000 in less than 8 hours with only 4 people? And I said, well, what would you normally pay, you know, my mom and dad and a guy like me? And he said, well, I'd probably pay you, you know, $10 or $15 an hour. So I did the math. I'm thinking, well, even if we work 10 hours a day and I paid everybody $10 an hour, that's only $100 per employee. If we have 5 employees, that's $500. I still made $1,500 that day. And that kind of sparked something in my mind.
James didn't waste time. He informed his mom of his new idea.
We got home that night and he said, that's what I'm going to do. That's how I'm going to make my first million. And so he wrote a check to himself that night and put it on the counter, and he said, can you frame this for me? He said, because one day I'm going to take that check to my bank and I'm going to cash it.
His parents believed in him and decided to help him out once again.
Decided, okay, fine, he has no money right now, a little bit of, you know, $10 in his piggy bank. We'll allow him to use our landscaping stuff, which we did. We gave him a shovel and a lawnmower and a trimmer until he could get his own money to buy his stuff. And he made up some flyers on his own, and he took them and delivered them throughout the whole neighborhood, and he got his first job, and he was so happy.
It would only take few weeks before real results could start coming in. Danielle is one of the first few employees that James hired for his new landscaping company.
I saw an ad in the paper for some I didn't even know it was a landscaping company. I just saw an ad in the paper and I was applying for every job. And he said, sure, yeah, come for an interview. And I walked right, the first day I walked into the office, I walked right by him and I was like, oh, there's a kid, he's just working here. Like, whatever. So I went and sat down with the secretary, and this kid was like doing all sorts of work and whatever. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what that kid's doing, but whatever. And then Susan did my interview, and it was all pretty good. And then the first day that I worked, I went out with Jamie to work, and he was like, yeah, we'll give you a shot, we'll give you a chance. And we're like, let's go. So we went to a job, and the kid was like everywhere. He was ripping everything apart.
In an effort to make more money, James approached a corporate company in Calgary and misinformed them about his age in order to get a contract.
He went and approached a big home builder, fibbed to them and told them he was 18 so that the contract was legal and binding, and he got a huge contract. He came home and he was so excited, and his first check from that home builder I think was about $1,500, and he was dancing around the house like crazy and I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich. And again, we just looked at each other and had a little chuckle like, yeah, well, we could spend that on a mortgage payment right away.
What his mom didn't know was that James was aiming for something bigger.
So he started getting bigger and bigger before we realized that he had a lot of customers. And it got to the point where we had to literally work our 8-hour job a day and then come home and help him for another 5 or 6 hours doing his job, which we didn't mind because, again, it kept him out of trouble, not really realizing what an empire he was building at the time.
At the age of 16, while most kids are still in high school, James became a millionaire.
By the time he was 16 years old, he had $1 million in assets. The company was bringing in $7 million. And he came up to me one day and he said, you know, he says, I'd like you to take that check out of the frame. And I said, what for? That's kind of cool that you wrote that check to you when you were so young. He said, because I'm going to the bank today to cash that check.
His mom became emotional after witnessing her son's success.
I started crying because I was so proud of my child that he had accomplished this from such an early age. And